Today, I'm going to tell you how to stop most ransomware attacks using 3 simple but powerful methods. Just 3 simple things that will stop over 90% of all ransomware attacks. Patch management, password management, and multi-factor authentication. That's it. I'll explain why I make this claim, and then we'll give advice on how best to implement each of those methods in environments of different sizes. Let's stop ransomware in its tracks. By the way, if you don't know who I am, maybe this is your first episode, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup. And I've been passionate about backup and recovery and disaster recovery for over 30 years, ever since I had to tell my boss that there were no backups of the really important database that we just lost. I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to you. That's why I do this. On this podcast, we turn unappreciated backup admins into cyber recovery heroes. This is the Backup Wrap-Up. Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm your host, W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and I have with me a guy that was completely worthless during my recent smart device implementation. You were of no help, Prasanna.
It's not my fault that you happened to buy some random smart device that was not compatible with modern Wi-Fi technologies.
Yeah, well, where were you? I'm just saying, I count on your YouTube knowledge to pull me out of such things. I depend on you. I go and I do crazy things, and then I'm like, oh crap! I wonder if Prasanna could get me out of this hole.
So networking stuff is not YouTube; it's Reddit. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
So it turned out. So I bought this thing called a SUVie, SUVIE. The full thing is I accidentally bought a previous generation, thanks to, in my opinion, pretty crappy advertising on their part. And as a result, I had a device that when it went to connect to Wi-Fi, it was unable to sense that I have a mesh, and it was identifying the 2 nodes in my mesh as 2 instances of the Wi-Fi. And it didn't hit me at first that that's what was happening. And so I had to troubleshoot it all my own, Prasanna, with no help from you.
Yeah, and then you texted me and you were like, hey, so this is what the issue is. I was like, what were you even talking about?
See, that's how little help you were. You didn't even remember that you didn't help me.
Well, granted, you didn't tell me that you had Wi-Fi issues.
I didn't? I thought I told you that.
Nope, you just told me that you were not able to get the app to work.
Right. You couldn't get the app to work because of the Wi-Fi issues. That was the problem.
No, that piece you kind of missed.
Oh, I see. So it's my fault that you were unable to help me. Okay.
Because we all know how you don't do so well multitasking, so
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm currently doing 7 things right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how was your meal, though?
The meal turned out fine, but we're working out exactly what's going to happen regarding the new generation. I sent them the images that misled me, and my dream is that they do a price match, that I get the new generation for the old generation money. But between me and you, they'll never see this. Between me and you, I fully expect them to charge me the difference between the two, and we'll swap it, and then we'll see how it goes. But today we are, we've been talking for the last few weeks about cybersecurity, and we've been sort of leading up to this moment where we're going to start to talk about ransomware, right? I think we had three great episodes where we had the red team person, we had a blue team person, and then we had a red team person that turned into a blue team software person, Des, and those all give such unique perspectives in terms of the cybersecurity world and um, you know how you defend yourself just in general from cybersecurity. And then we had a couple of episodes where we gave you a lay of the land from a ransomware perspective, and also really importantly, I think our last few episodes, if nothing else, I want people to understand that their backup system is 100% under attack. And
Mhm.
if you just want to listen to the red team episode, just the last third of it, if that's all you listen to Dwayne talking about how much he loves when there's a backup system, and how much from a red team perspective he loves to have access to that, and how uh, just why it's such a wonderful thing to attack.
So I don't know if you read today's news though. So Veeam just recently had their conference Veeam on. And so they just announced that they are offering a cloud vaulting solution managed by Veeam that provides immutable storage for backups
Interesting. So
as a SaaS offering.
as an offering.
Yep. So you pay per month based on your terabytes. I think it was like $60 or $80 per terabyte per month.
Mm-hmm.
And you can vault your backups into Veeam's vault, and it'll be immutable. It'll be stored there. They'll protect it, all the rest. So I think it's relevant to what we had been talking about in the last couple episodes.
It's absolutely relevant. Yeah. The That's interesting. I think this is a big step for Veeam, because for a long time they have not really gone down the service line, right?
Yeah.
But I think this is definitely a good step for them. Um, but that's the big thing, right? Is it we just want people to understand the degree to which their backup servers are under attack. And then the title that I put up for this one was how to stop basically 90% of all ransomware attacks, or how to stop ransomware the easy way, right? Because and you just sent me a graphic which why don't you talk about that graphic, or the lesson from that graphic?
Yeah. So it was by on X, or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, by Daniel Card, who goes by the Twitter handle Mr. Reboot. And it basically talks about how expensive things get to uh, detect or prevent
Mm-hmm.
ransomware or an attack, and where it happens. So, for instance, if you were trying to look at the cost of the attack when you are at the recovery stage, it's at the highest because you now
Right.
have a bunch of infrastructure. You're trying to recover everything. It's super expensive. But then if you go to sort of less costly from there, it's like responding. So you don't need to recover, but you're responding, but it still has a significant cost associated with it. Next was around the detect side, which isn't as expensive, and then protect, which is the cheapest of all. So it's basically significantly cheaper to break a kill chain at the protect stage
Right.
than at the recover stage. So how do you prevent ransomware from even coming in?
Yeah.
Because it gets significantly more expensive if you've already been hit.
And the thing is, if we look at the typical uh, attack process, right? All you have to do is stop one. You have to stop the kill chain somewhere along the way. All you have to do is stop one of those. So if you have good password management, you can stop them from getting the password in the first place. But if you've got a good MFA system, you can stop them from using a password that they're stolen. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, is when you look at all of the stories, all of the ransomware attacks, the ones that go into how the attack happened in detail almost always come down to you know, when I read it, I say, well, gee, if the customer had just done A, B, or C, they would have stopped this ransomware attack. So this is what I'm saying. If you want to stop ransomware attacks the easy way, if you want to stop 90+% of ransomware attacks, stop all of the stupid ones and then spend your time, effort, and money on stopping the harder ones,
The
right?
hard ones.
There was this great moment during Dwayne's um, recording where he talked about, he had this analogy and he said it's as if we're in this field and there's this door in the middle of the field and I go, gee, I can't go through this door. um I guess I can't do anything. And he's like, or I could just go around the door. What I'm saying is that if you don't do these three things that we're going to talk about, honestly, there's no point because it's essentially
Doing anything else.
it's like you have this open field. You're spending your time trying to figure out how to lock this door. Meanwhile, you have this wide open field. There's just literally no point in doing that.
Yeah. Or another thing I would think about similarly is like in a house, right? You're not going to go spend all this time on cameras and alarms and everything else when you leave the front door unlocked every day, or you don't even have a lock on your front door.
Exactly. This article that just got sent to me this morning, it's an interesting story, and I don't want to go too much into the full story. Why don't you give a brief summary of where we got to this point with this story?
Yeah. So this all initially started with the Ticketmaster Live Nation breach,
right?
And all their users' data was stolen, and they kind of pointed the finger saying Snowflake was the one that was attacked and breached and lost the data. Snowflake came back and said, hey, it's not us. Someone's sort of gotten the customer credentials,
right,
and are now using that to then pilfer data from their Snowflake instance. And so it's not the Snowflake side. And so they're warning their other customers, hey, by the way, make sure that you're looking after things so you don't lose your data. In fact, just as we're recording this, Advanced Auto Supply, which is an auto parts store, also had their data breached from their Snowflake instance.
Yeah. So I do feel like there's a piece to that puzzle missing. Like if it would, I'm inferring from what I'm reading that maybe somewhere there is a list of Snowflake accounts and passwords, which would suggest some fault on the part of Snowflake. But what they are saying is that Snowflake is definitely saying that they're seeing a surge of attacks on customers of its cloud platform. But my point of that whole story is that all of these attacks would be stopped by one of the three things that we're going to talk about today.
They did say that Snowflake was attacked and employees' credentials were used, but it was only used to access a demo account, which of course did not have one of the three things we're about to talk about.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't production customer data, it was just a demo account.
Hey, you got robbed, but they only took your empty wallet. Something like that. But all right. So how do we stop basically ransomware the easy way? How do we stop 90% of ransomware attacks? And the thing is, frequent listeners to this podcast are going to know immediately where I'm going. And I apologize for repeating myself, but sometimes you got to say things over and over and over again. And the very first thing that I'm going to talk about is patch management. Right. When we think back on the list of cloud hacks that we covered a few weeks ago, I remember at least one of them, the Rackspace one, was based on a patch. Can you think, were any of the other ones?
I think that was the only one that I recall.
Okay. But just in those 10 stories that we had, one of them, and a really big one, that basically took out an entire business line. if they had simply followed standard patch management procedures and put in their patches at a, you know, especially critical patch.
Urgent.
So I think if you just follow the CVE system and what it suggests, then I think you'd be in a much better place. Why don't you talk about what that is?
Yeah, so the CVE is critical vulnerabilities and exposure, and it's a public database, if you will, where you have vendors with known issues that then get cataloged, and then it can be tracked, and they assign a severity to these. So if you look at the levels, there is part of the common vulnerability scoring system that they look at. So it's how critical is it, how likely is it, how many people get impacted, and all the rest. And it goes everywhere from low all the way up at the highest level is critical. And critical is like a 9 and a 10 on their scale of 0 through 10.
Right.
And so those ones that are either actively exploited or very common to access, those are the ones that usually get like a higher critical severity, which pretty much means as a vendor or a customer using that piece of software, you want to fix that pretty quickly. Like if there was a VMware ESXi bug that allowed root takeover of the system, that's probably something you want to patch pretty rapidly.
Right. Right. Which is what happened with the Exchange vulnerability. That there was, it's a little complicated. If you want the full story, go listen to that episode about Rackspace. But there were two different vulnerabilities. There was one that they had
Was
made a
that the
workaround for that, which is why I think, if I'm guessing, what that Rackspace had done the workaround,
yeah,
and because they had done the workaround, maybe they didn't feel the need to put the patch in, as they didn't feel, it lowered its criticality. But because they didn't patch the previous um, vulnerability, there turned out to be a new vulnerability that patch would have fixed, but they didn't fix it. Right. So
yeah.
it's like, if you just put in the patches when they become available, and of course, being the show that we are, what do I often say about putting in patches?
Don't forget about your backup system for patch management because everyone always thinks about production or end user devices, but they always forget about backup systems.
Yeah, I would actually put that even stronger. I would put the backup system at the front of the line.
Yeah.
Maybe, well, it depends, right? It depends on the kind of
Yeah.
patch, right? Obviously, if it's an Exchange vulnerability patch, the backup system is going to be last in line.
Yeah.
But if or even not even in the line, but if it's
Yeah.
a remote code execution against Windows, or something like that, then I would think that your last line of defense should be your first line of
Yeah.
where
I
patches
think.
can go.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to talk about, Curtis, that I don't think we've normally talked about is patch management only works if you know what's running in your environment. So make sure you have a good inventory of software packages that are used at your company, including all the random ones that people might install. And maybe you do have an application process as part of IT approved applications, because that's the only way you're going to be able to tell what's actually in my environment and do I have everything patched and updated as needed.
Yeah, and there are tools that can help you do that, right?
Yeah.
Software inventory tools.
Yep.
Um, for a fee, they will go out and figure out if you have a complete, you know, I was going to say greenfield, but that's not the right. I was
Yeah. Yeah.
complete wild west. I
Yeah.
remember. I remember. A friend of the pod that he hasn't been on the pod, but he's definitely a friend of the pod. That the first thing I did with him, we were trying to. He was a client, and the first thing I did with him, I was like, "Well, what do you have in your environment?" He's like, "I don't know."
I don't know.
Right.
Yep.
And here's the crazy part: is that I don't know if I've had this conversation with you before.
Mm-mm.
What Microsoft tool did I install to inventory this guy's environment in terms of tell me how many different boxes, what the network topology was, the IP addresses and the switches and all that stuff. What Microsoft tool did I install to do this discovery? And by the way, the tool was very expensive at the time. It was like
Oh,
$10,000.
you did tell me. Visio.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
and
do remember this. Yeah.
and the thing is, it more than paid for itself. People that use Visio now are like, "What? Visio is a network
Yeah.
discovery tool?" Yes, that's exactly what it was. And the fact that they just, I don't know, they just put that part to bed. Maybe it was just too hard to maintain or something. But we gave that customer their first network topology map using Visio.
Yep.
It was a beautiful thing. So you're right. You've got to have the system inventory. You've got to have the OS inventory, the application inventory, so that you know. And then there are patch management systems, right, that can help you
Well,
navigate this maze.
can I go one more step beyond that too?
Sure.
In addition to applications, I think you should also consider things that you are using in your code development. For instance, what libraries are you pulling from? What open source packages are you pulling from? Because even though you may not consider that part of your application, developers are building and testing. I don't know if you heard about this issue that someone had done a long con operation on an open source package. I don't know if you
Great.
heard about this.
Mm-mm.
And they basically took over maintaining a very popular compression library that a ton of software packages use, a lot of Linux open distribution software, and they had put a back door into it because they realized that library is also used by SSH. A random developer who works at Microsoft noticed that the latency had increased by like 600 milliseconds, and he had traced it back and found out that someone had backdoored this common open source software. I think we should attach a link. There's a podcast that goes over this, which is amazing. So we will
Wow.
put a link to that. But yeah,
Yeah. So all software, all tools, all libraries, and tools that you're using to make that software, right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, that would become quite an inventory over time, but that's your job, right?
yep,
And all it's they talk a lot like in terrorism. If you're trying to prevent terrorism, you have to be right 100% of the time. They only have to be right
yeah,
once, right? They only have to
yeah,
get into one of these tools, and
yep,
they are well equipped. We can talk about the dark web. They are well equipped. They are well connected. They're well, they know what they're doing, and they share tools. So you need to do the
yeah.
same thing. So the first thing is patch management. What is going to be the second thing, Prasanna?
So it's your favorite topic, Curtis, which is around passwords. And I
Yes.
know we talked about credential stuffing just recently with the Salesforce attack. But yeah, passwords are critical because every system uses a different password. Even if you use single sign on and all the rest, right, you still have a password. And it gets worse with single sign on because once you're into one system, you can get into everything else.
Right.
So having strong passwords and also using a password manager. So you're not just doing variations of the same password depending on the system you're logging into. So password management is key, making sure that you have a system. And I'm kind of indifferent if it's a cloud-based system or a local-based system. I know, Curtis, you like cloud-based password managers.
Mhm.
I would say every corporation can decide what makes sense for their environment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. I think I'm similar to you in that I'm not hard fast one or the other. For me, it's cloud based because
Yep.
for me, I don't want to maintain the keys to my kingdom. I don't want to maintain the system that is, to you, it's the other way around. You're like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
maintain the keys to it. Yeah, it's a personal preference thing. I don't think
Yeah.
there's, again, as long as you do your due diligence and you don't use a password service that has been hacked multiple times. as long as you don't do that. And you look at the design of the password. You look at how they're storing the passwords. Are passwords ever stored in clear text? Where are the passwords encrypted? Where are they decrypted? You look
And
at all those things.
and it's not just the password; it's even URLs.
Right. Are they storing? Yeah, because that was something that came out in one of the recent hacks, right? That one of the things that
Yep.
they were able to do
Which
is
they
to get
fixed now.
URLs, which they have fixed. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still not going to use them. Um,
But
go ahead.
But I think when you are using a password manager, and I know we've talked about this also on the podcast with Sue, is make sure you have a backup of your password manager as well, right? Going back and talking about the inventory, right? Your password manager is your keys to your kingdom.
Right.
If you don't have access to your password manager, you're a little screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. You need. Yeah. There's a great episode. Like, how do you um, what happens when you lose everything, right? When you lose all the keys to the kingdom. And by the way, the one that I happen to use, which is Dashlane, they recently created an additional like doomsday key that you can use in addition to all of the others. And the doomsday key. My problem, the same as her problem. My problem has always been,
You put
okay,
that.
so I create the doomsday key. Where do I put that?
Yep.
Right. And this is where friends and family, I think, come into play, right?
Yeah.
But I was really happy to see when we had, what now?
Sorry. I was thinking friends and family who can make sure they know they can keep that safely and know where it exists.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, choose wisely.
Yeah.
The other part about Dwayne's interview that I really liked was when we got to the part about password managers, and he was, oh yeah, he's like, yes, I'm 100% on. I was really worried that he'd be like, okay, no, people that know what they're doing don't want to use password managers. I was really ready for that, but no, Dwayne was
But
100% on board.
But I think there are two things that you should be careful of, though, even with the password manager.
Talk to me.
So the first is if you are storing it in like a web browser or other things that autofills your password,
Mm-hmm.
be a little careful of that because if someone compromises your device and they have access to your web browser, it could now automatically start filling in your passwords to things like your backup system or
Yeah.
Active Directory and other things like that. So be careful.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing it up, which is why, good, better, best, a browser based password manager is better than no password manager. But I am not a fan of browser based, meaning the password manager built into Chrome or
Yeah.
Firefox or, what's the other one?
Safari,
No. Well, there's Safari, but
no,
what's the Microsoft one?
Edge.
Edge. Yeah. Literally, by the way, Edge just passed some milestone of where like it's now 15% or something. I don't know. They're very
Interesting.
excited about that. Anyway, I'm not a fan of password
So,
managers built into the thing because of exactly what you talked about, right?
yeah.
It's
And
really easy, for example, if I've got physical access to your device, it's really easy for me to hack into it and to eventually get to log in as you, and now I can open up your browser, and then poof, I'm everywhere.
yeah. Which is why your password manager should either require biometric authentication
Yeah,
or a password, a master password, in order to open it to use it.
exactly. By the way, when we say password management, we mean the overall system of making sure that passwords have a sufficient length, making sure that you separate. We believe strongly in separating the backup system passwords, usernames and passwords from the production usernames and passwords. We do not believe in separate or sharing this with something like Active Directory, or even Okta, right? Between the two systems, I believe that they should be 100% separate, and that there should be a separate sort of doomsday-based password management system for the backup system because of exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
If your Active Directory or Okta or whatever you're using is compromised, you are locked out of your backup system. And more importantly, they have access to your backup system. So that's why I think it should be a separate system. Any final thoughts on password management before we move on to the one that I don't know why everybody doesn't have it on everything, but
I'm ready. What's the next one, Curtis?
Multi-factor authentication. How does not everybody have multi-factor authentication on everything, including Ticketmaster? Right? The Live Nation thing that the story that we talked about in the beginning. If you read that full story, you get down to the part where basically Snowflake says, hey, we're seeing a significant increase in attacks on our accounts. Please enable multi-factor authentication. To which I want to say, what? Right? I asked two questions, and we got to define it and everything, right? But question number one, a company like Live Nation, how do they not already have MFA turned on anything that matters? Number one. And number two, how service providers don't enforce MFA. You are seeing this, right? Can you think of a service that you've used where they've come out and they say you have to use MFA?
Well, I think the one I could think of is, and I don't know if it's a systems configurations, but typically if you use an SSO, single sign-on provider, right? Normally they do require MFA.
You're right in that same line. The first thing that came to my mind was my password manager, right? Any decent password manager is going to require MFA, right? I'm pretty sure actually Gmail logging into Google now requires MFA, right?
I'm guessing so. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it does now.
Yeah, and I like the way theirs is. It's very emphasis on the M, right? It's like we know that you're logged into YouTube on your phone, so we're going to send you this like thing that you have to respond to in the YouTube app, right? Yep. Or sometimes they'll do it through Gmail, right? It's emphasis on the multi. So we've been talking about multi-factor authentication now for a couple of minutes. Just in case there's somebody that doesn't actually know what it is, do you want to like give an overview?
Yeah. So multi-factor authentication is basically saying that in order for you to gain access to an account or to log in, it's not just good enough to have a single factor, which is usually your password. You need to have multiple factors. Usually that other factor could vary depending on company. Sometimes it could be I receive a text message and I now need to enter a code into the system. It could be I need to enter a code that is part of an authentication app that generates one-time codes. It could be I need to use my face and my biometrics as a sort of second way to authenticate. I guess technically you could receive postal mail with a code.
IRS does MFA with postal. If you've never set up the way you get set up the first time, they use the mail system as it's a little slow.
Yeah. Sometimes you might get a voice call, right? Where they're like, hey, here's your code.
Right.
I think those are the main ways. Oh, the other way is sometimes you might get a code texted to like a recovery account.
Right. Yeah. There's that.
You then have to use.
Also, did you mention tokens, like physical tokens?
Oh, no, I didn't mention the physical tokens.
So there are also physical devices that are available. They're much more affordable than they used to be, right?
Yeah.
And basically they are one-time password generated. They just constantly generating a little, 6 or 8 digit number.
I think the popular one are called YubiKeys.
Yeah, YubiKey is a very popular one. There is definitely the good, better, best. What I'm saying is, please, for anything that matters, I'm not going to push you to do it for everything. Like if someone hacks my Spotify account, I don't know what damage they could possibly do, right? But if someone hacks my my Verizon account, they could buy new phones on my behalf, right? They,
Yeah.
a bank account, an email account, especially email account, because email accounts are often used as a multi-factor for other accounts. I don't like
Yep.
that, but it is the way,
Convenient.
the only way that's offered by some accounts.
Yeah.
Um, Please enable MFA on anything that matters in your organization. Think about and the thing is, it's just we've gone so long without this, right?
Yeah.
We've gone so long where all you need is the password to log into SSH. You can enable both on Windows and on Linux or other Unix
Certificate.
platforms. You can enable MFA to be able to log into the system. And all I'm saying is, please do that, and go through that inventory that you talked about. Look at the criticality. Look at the amount of damage, right? Like if I looking at a house, right? I don't have a password for my refrigerator, but I do for my gun locker, right?
Yeah.
Look at the things that you have in your environment where they could do the most damage. A backup system, a file system, an email system, really, right? If are there people that are using Exchange,
Mhm.
Microsoft 365? I think you're required to do it with Gmail. Um,
But
does
maybe not the other
does
ones.
Microsoft 365 require it? I don't know.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they do.
Well,
Maybe
and
they don't.
or if it is, maybe it's just sending a code to the same email account. So if you've compromised the email account,
Yeah,
like
I
the
don't know.
system itself, then
Yeah.
yeah.
So
The
yeah,
one thing,
go ahead.
so I totally agree, MFA is important, but you should also think about the situations you could end up with if you lose the device or the ability to generate the second factor. So I know,
Agreed.
Curtis, you had that issue with your phone when you upgraded.
I did. And all of the cloud accounts that I had were able to help me. It was definitely painful to reboot, but a little bit not painful enough for some of them
Yeah.
in terms of regenerating, right? Um, I was a little worried, and luckily it wasn't that bad. But the yeah, definitely make sure that when you're implementing this for your organization, make sure you have a failback, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you have a system by which, if somebody does lose their key fob, if they lose the app, if they can no longer log into their app, you've got a way to get around that. But that's something that needs to be done by an administrator.
Well, you have a way to get around that, and you also have a way to verify that the person who's asking to go around it is
Yeah,
a person who
yes.
says they
And that is
are.
getting harder and harder these days. A simple voice verification isn't enough anymore,
No.
unfortunately. Um, uh, that's we're starting to get to the edge of my knowledge. I mean, when I
Comfort,
look at
yeah.
that, I would say that you would want to have a very unnatural conversation with a person. You would want to be asking questions that would not be possible for an AI to answer, right?
Yep.
I mean, unfortunately, we get back to sort of possibly the shared secrets, which is
Yeah.
always a vulnerability in any sort of crypto system.
Yeah.
But you've got to do something, right?
Yeah.
To ensure that the person that you're resetting the MFA for is indeed the person, right? Because we have had that story as well. I
Yep.
believe that was which story was that where they
Was that the Okta?
yeah, I think it was the Okta thing where basically they were able to get him to reset the MFA, which is just wrong. So yeah, you
Yeah.
need a system for resetting the MFA, but you need a system to make sure that you're only doing that for the for the authorized people. But I guess just number one thing again, good, better, best. Make sure you've got a system, and then as you have a system, make sure you implement or you enhance that system to deal with the an advanced persistent threat where
Yeah.
they're going and attacking you. The In terms of MFA system, by the way, it used to be called 2FA, two-factor authentication. We now call it MFA, multi-factor authentication. In terms of in order of good, better, best, would we say email, then SMS, then
I think so.
OTP,
Yeah.
right? All right.
Yep.
So, and then sort of physical token. Why are email and SMS on the lowest of the good, better, best list?
Well, if you think about SMS right now, there's a lot of SIM hijacking that goes on, right?
Yeah.
I've heard countless cases about people going to a cell phone provider, SIM hijacking, stealing someone's phone number, and then draining their crypto wallet because that's the way that they had used for the multi-factor authentication.
So would we actually put SMS under email then, or is email less or more
I think
secure?
they're about the same. I think they're
About the
about
same.
the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
ish.
You're probably right. Yeah. So email, SMS, and the problem is this is what's used by probably the majority of people that are doing in the consumer world, because the next requires a significant change for the typical consumer. But when we're talking about corporate world, we've got sort of free OTP, and that OTP just stands for one-time password. We got free OTP implementations like Google Authenticator, um, and
Authy.
I use Authy. There are others. And then you have software-based OTP such as Semantic, the VIP program. The big difference between these
And
two,
RSA.
oh, an RSA, right? Thank you. The
Mhm.
big difference between those two categories, generally, in my experience, the free OTPs, they're doing it based on an atomic clock, and so it just resets at the top of the minute. And so you just if you get to the end of the 60 seconds, you just have to like try the next password. Whereas
Yeah.
with the commercial ones, the 60 seconds or 30 seconds starts with the moment that you open the app,
Request.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure there's probably additional security provided by them as well. But that's the big, from a usability perspective, that's a big difference between those
Yeah.
two. And then we've got
Security
the key
or
fob. Go ahead.
and also between the free and the commercial. The other thing is probably from an admin management perspective, the
Mhm.
commercial ones are probably easier to manage a large number of users
Right.
than free solutions.
Exactly. And then we have the key fob, right? The physical ones, which are
Hardware
also
tokens.
offered by
Yep.
YubiKey and also by RSA, right? They also offer the physical key fob.
The one that we didn't talk about that we probably should include, and it's kind of lumped under the hardware one,
Hmm.
is also like key cards. So if you work in the government, your
Hmm.
ID has a certain key on it. And for instance, even if you enter your password, it won't unlock without actually having the card as well.
So you'll need somewhere to basically tap that card.
Well, in laptops, as an example, you insert, there's a slot in laptops
Right,
that are
right.
sold for
So
government
yeah, so that's
employees.
that's a physical
Yeah.
thing. And by the way, the most of the stuff is available as an app on the computer or an app on your smartphone. The software solutions that we were talking about. I do prefer Authy over Google Authenticator mainly because of the problem that the fact
Yeah.
that I could back up my password system. And then do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the ultimate, which is biometric detection?
Yeah. So the last one is really biometric. So I'm sure everyone on your phone these days, you use a Face ID or your thumbprint to unlock your phone, right? And so a lot of apps that are installed on your phone can also say, hey, enter your password and now give me a biometric as well to make sure it's really you.
Right, right. And there's also like built into laptops, you have
Yep.
fingerprint detection on your laptops. And there's face detection built into, a lot of apps. I guess what
Yep.
I'm just saying is username and password is not enough anymore. And it
Yep.
just continues to amaze me that when I read a story like the one that I read this morning, that it's like, here it is, a major corporation that was attacked simply because they didn't have MFA enabled on an app that allows MFA.
Mm. Yeah.
I just don't understand that. So if that's you, please now, like immediately, especially again, you're a backup person. If you listen to me, you're a backup person. Go to your backup system. Have I enabled MFA on that backup? Have I enabled MFA on, Veeam, Druva, Rubrik, Cohesity? Have I enabled that?
Yeah.
Did they force me to enable? I wish they would. If they haven't forced you to enable it, do it now. Do it now before you finish this podcast.
Yeah. Now, I would say that for many of these systems, because they do support single sign-on, it's usually up to those single sign-on providers to do the MFA. For instance, if you are able to log into, say, Rubrik using Okta as your single sign-on provider, as long as Okta has MFA enabled, Rubrik necessarily doesn't need explicitly to support it because it's already supported by the single sign-on provider.
So I'm going to agree and disagree with you, right? Is there a way to log into Rubrik without that? That system needs MFA.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Yep. If there's like a back door, a back way, if Okta is down, there's another way for you to log into your favorite backup system. That system needs to have MFA.
Yeah.
And it's the back doors that often get compromised because they're ignored and not maintained. So
and change your default password.
Again, we keep reading these things, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, this will stop 90+% of ransomware attacks out there. And all of this stuff is relatively easy. And there's no point in doing the fancier stuff until you've done this.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for, helping me work through that, Prasanna.
No worries, Curtis. And I'm glad your Wi-Fi is up and running. And
that's what I was about to say. Even though you were completely worthless yesterday, right around this time. And thanks again to our listeners. We'd be nothing without you. That is a wrap. The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links for my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.